This is me, testing multiple guns, bullets and armors in Arena Breakout Infinite. I'm trying once and for all to figure out how distance, armor class, bullet class and piercing work. There are a few things that are still hard to confirm, but you should get answers to about 90% of your questions. It's a long one, I will have chapters below, let's go. First, let's talk about a bullet's most important stat, flesh damage. This is what makes the pew-pew put your opponent down. If you didn't know, there are only two ways you could die in Arena Breakout Infinite. Either your head loses all HP or your thorax loses full HP. So either 40 damage to the head or 85 damage to the chest. And if you look at the bullet classes, you will see something peculiar. The lower class bullets have much higher flesh damage, whereas the higher class bullets, which also have more armor penetration, have lower actual damage. This is part of how the developer balances its guns and economy, and it's an important thing to keep in mind as we keep unraveling all of this. You will notice that each gun has an effective range, which happens to be quite comical to their real-world counterparts. Basically, any target that is outside this effective range will receive 70% of your bullet's damage, not the full amount. You get a 30% penalty. This is why you can do a clean headshot on someone with an 855A1 and not put them down. They are a couple of meters out of range and you only did 33 damage to them. This gets even more complicated when we add armor in the mix, so hold on. What does the penetration stat mean? The first digit basically tells you what class the bullet is, so a 45 penetration stat means it's a class 4 bullet. What does the second digit stand for? It basically denominates how much flesh damage carries over after you penetrate, but it's not an exact science and you'll see why in a bit. How much damage do you do when you penetrate armor? So you either penetrate armor because you have the same class bullet or above, or the armor is damaged enough to let any bullet through. In either case, penetrating armor does not carry the full damage over. Your bullet suffers a penalty. We're now looking at some tables I made. This is how the second digit affects how much damage travels through. Basically, a higher penetration stat means that slightly more damage gets through, but as you can see, they are not exact because the piercing damage also varies by bullet caliber, and not all calibers have every second digit stat available to test. So if it's the same class bullet hitting the same class armor, you will deal between 65 and 70% of the flesh damage stat. If the bullet is one class above, you will deal between 90-ish to 98-ish%. If the bullet is two classes above, armor is completely ignored. This is why snipers choose to use red ammo whenever they can. If the bullet is one class below the armor, you will deal between 59.6% and 60-ish%. If it's two classes below, you will deal between 59 and 60-ish%, so basically it's mostly the same when you're below the armor's class. What is different is your chance to actually penetrate. So how does damaged armor affect my defense? If your armor is damaged but not destroyed, it increases the chances of a lower class bullet to penetrate it. Sadly, I can't give you exact chance to pen stats unless I spent hundreds of hours just shooting at targets and recording every shot. Within effective range, the same class bullet will always penetrate the same class armor. A bullet that is a class below will need to damage it a bit, and bullets that are even lower on the food chain will have less and less of a chance, so they need to really dump into you. However, the lower the armor's durability, the higher the chance they have to pierce. Do different armor materials affect damage reduction? You've seen that some armors are aluminum, some are ceramic, some are hardened steel. This does not affect how much flesh damage travels through. It does affect how well the armor repairs when you're fixing it out of raid. I don't know and I cannot test if it affects how much actual armor damage it receives, but I'm starting to believe it doesn't affect that at all. Armor penetration outside of effective range. First of all, your chance to pierce armor drops when outside of effective range. For smaller calibers like the 5.56, the same class bullet will always be swallowed by the armor first. After one shot, your second one is guaranteed to pierce. Bigger bullets like the AKM 7.62x39 can still pierce at about 30% beyond their effective range. You will find that the devs really like the 30% and 70% numbers. A bullet that's higher class than the armor will almost always pierce even outside of effective range. However, if you are at almost double the effective range, to be exact, if you are at 170% distance of your effective range stat, lower caliber bullets that are higher class will still not pierce pristine armor on the first shot. For example, the M4 and the T191 suffer from this, but the AK with 7.62 ammo does not. Armor penalties increase when you are out of range. Okay, so when out of effective range, your gun only does 70% damage. If you are piercing with the same class bullet up to 2 classes below, you will deal 60% of that 70% damage. That's why sometimes you mag dump someone that's 50 meters away and they just walk away. If you're piercing with the bullets that's one class above the armor class, you're dealing 70% of that 70% damage. So slightly better, still not ideal. This is why you can sometimes shoot someone clean in the face through a class 3 face shield and get nothing. 2 classes and above still ignore armor, even out of range. Does zeroed armor let all the damage through? Yes, if your armor is fully red, it's essentially useless and still heavy. However, even if it's at 1 durability, it will still block 30 to 40% of the damage of that initial 1 bullet. How does the armor damage stat work? This is the one that I cannot fully test because I need another player and there are no custom games in this game. But from what I can make of it, higher class armors also have a higher resistance to armor damage. This 8.55 round has 13 armor damage. However, when I dump 10 of them in this class 6 armor, it is still not fully destroyed. It needs a few extra shots, so obviously this stat is not an exact set in stone number. Does the armor damage stat suffer penalties out of range? I believe so, but I can still not perform an exact test. What does firing power mean actually? Essentially, this is just extra damage that your gun adds to the bullet's damage stat. Here's the table. As you can see, medium firing power is basically 0. You do the clean stat damage. Mid-high goes from 0 to +2 or +4 damage depending on the gun. For example, the M4 is described as mid-high but adds no additional damage, unless you modify it with a longer barrel. High firing power means +4 to +6 added damage. Important to note, stronger guns like the marksman rifles and bolt actions have bigger inherent firing power. For example, the M24 with high firing power adds +9 damage to its round, or an SVD marksman rifle, which has high firing power, adds +7 damage. So we only have one weapon in this game that has ultra high, and that's the U191, but it's also a marksman rifle, so it gets +8, but how much of that is because of firing power and how much of that is because it's a marksman rifle? I don't know. Basically, it's a bullshit stat that makes calculating everything super hard. You may also have noticed that some guns have less than medium firing power. Mid-low means that you get -1 to -3 of your bullet damage, and low means -5. Does firing power also increase the armor damage stat? I think so. There's no way to perform an exact test. Does firing power get reduced by range? Yes. Beyond effective range, your firing power bonus also drops by a little bit. +1 goes to +0, +2 firing power gets rounded down to +1, +4 gets rounded down to +3, +6 goes down to +4, and +8 went down to +5. Interestingly enough, guns with negative firing power get balanced up. I tested this with the Vector, which is -5 when in range. When outside of effective range, its firing power grows to -4. Does firing power damage get reduced by armor? Yes. When you penetrate armor to do your damage, the flash damage stat is reduced and the firing power bonus gets a penalty. Depending on bullet class, +1 firing power may be rounded down to +0, +2 goes down to +1, +4 goes down to +3, +6 goes down to +4, and +8 gets rounded down to +6 or +5 depending on bullet class. Yeah, this stat is just crazy random and makes things super hard to calculate. Also, the -5 low firing power penalty grows to -3 when shooting a higher class armor, or -4 for the same class, so it's kind of an attempt to balance out something, I'm not sure what. Penalties to firing power damage applied by range and armor stack in a diminishing fashion. The U1 deals +8 from firing power when in range and hitting flesh, +6 when in range and piercing armor, that's a -2 penalty, +5 when out of range and hitting flesh, and then +4 when out of range and piercing armor, so that's only a -1 penalty. What does this all mean? Sometimes the TTK in this game feels amazing, sometimes you mag dump in somebody and they just shake it off. As you can see, there are a lot of values and a lot of numbers. You can't be expected to keep track of all of it. Add helmet ricochets in the mix and it really adds a degree of randomness. So, I don't know, keep playing tactical, keep playing carefully, and the knowledge here should help you understand how to survive better, and also why class 3 and below bullets are absolutely useless, and why 855A1s have a reputation of being unable to kill, I guess. Do you like these deep dives? Well, so do I. Stick around for more, let me know what you wanna know. I'll see if I can test it.